open this event, I'd like to invite Mr. Zanofer Ismail, Chief Knowledge Management at the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, to give some opening remarks. Zanofer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Hani. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, dear participants. It is my pleasure to meet you all virtually today, which is also my first kind of external engagement as the incoming Chief Knowledge Management at UN OSSE HQ. I'm currently winding up my assignment as the Regional Chief UN OSSE Division for Arab States, Europe, and the CIS based in Istanbul. Before we get to the main thrust of the event, let me also warmly welcome you all to the launch of these the 3 papers on digital transformation, and also wish to thank and acknowledge the strong partnership that we have with UNDP and member think tank networks in enabling the exchange of diverse range of knowledge, pool multidisciplinary expertise, conduct a collaborative research, and also convene a series of policy dialogues on scaling up South-South and triangular cooperation. Dear participants, the role and the influence of think tanks continue to be a crucial factor in policy formulation and implementation, be it at the global, regional, sub-regional, or country level. And our collective efforts to provide, as mentioned by Dr. Hani, through over 250 think tanks, cutting-edge knowledge products demonstrate our resolve to respond positively to what the member states have been calling for at all levels. For example, in paragraphs 24 and 27 of the Baba Plus 40 outcome document, member states have not only commended the contribution of think tanks, committees of practice, networks, and expert groups for their contribution to the improvement of South-South and triangular cooperation, but also encourage the UN entities to continue to engage with these organizations more effectively in efforts to better understand the role and role and impact of South-South and triangular cooperation to successfully implement the 2030 agenda in the regional development frameworks, such as the African Union Agenda 2063. Moreover, they've also requested the UN development system to continue its support to the strengthening of relevant research institutions, academic institutions, think tanks, knowledge networks, and relevant regional and thematic centers of excellence as institutional spaces for knowledge development and sharing on South-South triangular cooperation. It is knowledge that makes cooperation and collaboration possible in addressing complex and intractable challenges in different regional and country contexts and typologies in an impactful manner, given also the growing geopolitical dynamics and the shrinking of development space. Dear colleagues and partners, the South-South Ideas paper series present an important opportunity to disseminate the extensive and cross-disciplinary breadth of knowledge and evidence-based analysis on topics of South-South and triangular cooperation, and to allow for readers to access cutting-edge research and policy proposals and recommendations under one umbrella to supplement the amplification of diverse and relevant perspectives on issues in South-South or in development cooperation, broadly speaking. The 3 papers that are being launched today cover a broad aspect of digital transformation, including the potential opportunities and challenges of ICT and digital transformation, and provide policy recommendations to further strengthen and deepen South-South and triangular cooperation, so as to address the widening digital divide while scaling up digital capacities and solutions. These papers also explore new avenues of cooperation and pathways for fostering regional integration through South-South and East-East in some cases, and triangular cooperation in areas such as digital technologies, trade, and finance. I hope that you will find these papers very useful for potential uptake among relevant stakeholders for informed policy making and implementation, especially as we recover from COVID-19. Let me conclude by saying that as my new capacity, I'm very much looking forward to work very closely with all of you and others that are not present today, to be even more responsive to the needs and the demands of member states, the UN development system, and other stakeholders. I wish you all an insightful and productive session. Thank you, and over to you, Dr. Hani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zanofer, for this very excellent opening remarks and setting the stage for today's discussion. I now have the honor to invite Mr. Babatunde Abidoye, Global Policy Advisor and Team Leader for Integrated Policy and Analytics at the United Nations Development Program, for his opening remarks. Mr. Adoy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hani, and thanks, Mrs. Anufar and other colleagues and members and representatives from the South-South Global Thinkers. This is excellent session that we're having today, and I look forward to the three commission research, which will through see the presentation from the colleagues. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all on behalf of UNDP, and I thank you all for joining us today. And thanks to Zanofer from the UNOSR for that welcoming remarks that you also gave. So as we all gone through the COVID-19 pandemic, right, and it is highlighted for all of us how digital connectivity, right, is fast becoming a global metric of inclusion and exclusion. Right? We all saw the lockdown and how we had to move into remote work, and for many people, they weren't able to connect at that point. Right? It has been seen that during the COVID-19 response and recovery, Southern actors have been joining efforts in implementing South-South and triangular cooperation initiatives, especially on the expansion of digital technologies across the global South. I was just in a meeting before this, talking to our colleagues in the Ethiopia country office, and they were highlighting to me the different work that they are doing through the South-South cooperation on the energy front and the digital side also. And that gives us a lot of value to this kind of work, and some of the things that you'll see presented later today. The spirit of the global solidarity that is evident in the South-South triangular cooperation is now more important than ever, and we'll see as we go on today. One of the indispensable actors is a think tank community, which bridges academic knowledge and government practice. So it is a great opportunity not only to reaffirm our commitment to the South-South triangular cooperation to build inclusive, ethical, and sustainable digital societies, but also to be able to highlight the key contributions of think tanks on this endeavor. So since 2017, UNDP is proud to co-host the Joint Secretariat of the South-South Global Thinkers together with UNOSFC. This is a unique initiative because it's a network of networks. So the only one of this kind in bringing cutting-edge thought and evidence-based research, mainly from Southern perspective, to share knowledge, inform policy work, and also help us accelerate progress towards the SDGs. This is closely aligned with the outcome document of the second high-level conference on the South-South Cooperation in 2019, which says that it's crucial to strengthen think tank and knowledge networks as spaces for knowledge development and sharing. Also, the high-level committee on South-South Cooperation in 2021 also acknowledged contribution of the South-South global thinkers in bringing together Southern think tank networks for knowledge generation and also sharing at the same time. So today we are pleased to launch the findings of the three commissioned research papers developed by members of the South-South Global Thinkers. And we'll have colleagues, Dr. Wen Chen, Dr. Bakar Ahmed, and Dr. Samia Sati that will be presenting some of this work. And it addresses the digital divide, scaling up technological transfer and innovation, and enabling digital transformation. That's showcasing that the SSTC is crucial in leveraging digital solutions and new technologies for collective benefits across countries. So we are fully committed to leveraging UNDP's continuing role as a trusted, long-standing supporter and partner for the South-South triangular cooperation. In this line, I'm happy to share that there's a revamped support to UNDP with a dedicated South-South Triangular cooperation team that is putting substantial work, time, and commitment to bring a South-South global thinkers to the next level, together with our colleagues at UN OSS. Moreover, the South-South cooperation has become an important feature of UNDP's digital project. So it accounts for about 19% of all the digital projects in 2021 in UNDP. This is also aligned with our work on the strategic plan. It's just launched in 2022 to 2025, where we consider the South-South Triangular Cooperation integral to how UNDP understands the future of development and the digital strategy itself. So here we will aim to create a world in which digital is an empowering force for people and planet. So I wish you all a successful event, and thank you for joining this. Look forward to the technical commission research findings also. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abidoye, for your wonderful remarks, and UNDP for its very important support and partnership on the South-South Global Thinkers Initiative, and for helping to make this webinar possible in the first place. To virtually launch the South-South Idea Papers, I'd like to now invite our very distinguished panel of experts from the Global Thinkers member think tanks. Our first speaker for today is Professor Dr. Samia Mohamed Noor. Dr. Noor is a full professor of economics and head of Department of Economics at Khartoum University in Sudan, an affiliated research fellow of the Economic Research Forum for the Arab Countries at Cairo, Egypt. Professor Noor holds a PhD in economics. Her main research interests are in the field of economics, economics of innovation and technological change, macroeconomics, microeconomics, among others. Professor Noor will present her paper on South-South cooperation, technology, and digital transformation, the case of Arab countries. Professor Noor, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to present to you this paper about South-South cooperation, technology, and digital transformation in the Arab country. First, I will show the outline of the presentation, aim of the research. Then, after that, I will show stylized fact about the Arab country. Then I will show the relevance and contribution of the research. Then I will talk briefly about research methodology. And then I will explain briefly the main result of the research. Finally, I will provide the conclusion and policy recommendation. First, aim of the research. This research aims to explain the use of information and communication technology and digital transformation in the global South, mainly focusing on Arab countries. In particular, this paper aims to explain the potential opportunity and positive impact of ICT and digital transformation in Arab countries. Second, it also aims to investigate the challenge and impact and the digital divide related to the use of ICT in the Arab countries. Finally, this research also aims to provide policy recommendation to support South-South cooperation, including Arab country cooperation, to address the digital transformation and digital economy and digital divide. Regarding this research, I will start by some stylized fact about the Arab country. We all know that the Arab country is lagging behind World Region in terms of standard of economic development, GDP per capita, and Human Development Index. But we should explain that we cannot make some generalization because we also realize regional disparity within Arab country in terms of standard of economic development, GDP per capita, and Human Development Index. We will share this stylized fact because this will affect the digital transformation and the digital divided Arab country. So we will try to relate this stylized fact to the situation available in the Arab country. For example, we will realize some differences in digital transformation, and we will also elaborate the availability or the incidence of the digital divide that related to the already existing divide within the Arab country in terms of standard of economic development, and GDP per capita and Human Development Index. For example, we see that United Arab Emirates and the Gulf country generally leading the Arab country in terms of GDP and human development. But we see that, for example, Yemen and Sudan are at the bottom in terms of GDP per capita and Human Development Index. This will affect also the digital transformation in Arab country and the digital divide. Regarding the relevance and contribution of this research, I think this research is very important because it provides comprehensive and in-depth investigation of the impact of the use of ICT on digitalization, digital transformation, and digital divide in the Arab country. This research provides very important contribution and fills the gap in the Arab literature because it discusses the impact of ICT on digitalization, digital transformation, and digital divide. A novel element of our analysis is that we investigate the positive and negative impact and opportunity and challenge related to utilization of ICT to support the digital transformation in the Arab country, and second, also to manage the digital divide that has been observed in the Arab country. And recently, also ICT has been widely used to manage the COVID pandemic in the Arab country. This research is also important because it provides comparative analysis, explain the variation or differences in the use and adoption of digital technology to foster digital transformation and reduce the digital divide across Arab country in through group of Arab country defined by income level. So we explain or discuss the digital transformation and the digital divide defined by income level in Arab country. This research also uses new secondary data obtained from the World Bank and International Telecommunication Union. They provide very interesting recent data that has been used to discuss the impact of the use of ICT on digitalization, digital transformation, and digital divide in the Arab country. And also comparison between Arab country and other or Arab region and other world region. Finally, this research is also very important and provide contribution because from policy perspective, it provides useful policy recommendation to support the digitalization and digital transformation and also to manage the digital divide in the Arab country. Research methodology, this research uses secondary data obtained from the World Bank and from International Telecommunication Union in order to analyze this. The digital transformation, we use the existing indicator that has been used in the literature to define or to measure the digital transformation. For example, we use the digital adoption index and we use the Hermes enabling digitalization index, and also we use the digital index. Also, we use the International Telecommunication Union and World Bank indicator to discuss the use of ICT and digital transformation in the Arab country. And also we find this data very useful to explain the digital divide in the Arab region. Upon discussion of this point, we also provide some useful insight and policy recommendation to manage the impact of the use of ICT on the digital divide in the Arab country. The main result of the research, we find that the use of ICT accelerated the digital transformation in some Arab country, but we find that some differences across Arab country because the acceleration in the digital transformation in the rich Arab country has been more fast compared to Arab poor country. We explain the opportunity and challenge related to utilization of ICT to support the digital transformation in the Arab country and to manage the digital divide in Arab country and also to manage the impact of COVID pandemic in Arab country. We explain that ICT provide opportunity for supporting digital transformation in the Arab country. We explain this by using several digital indicators, for example, digital adoption index and enabling digitalization index and the digital index. In addition to this, we explain the substantial discrepancy in Arab country in digital transformation. For example, we find the differences between Arab Gulf income, high income, and Arab middle income and low income country. in terms of digital adoption index and enabling digitalization index and digital index. We find that the Arab Gulf country reported more progress in terms of digital transformation, while Arab poor country show a slow progress towards the digital transformation. So the substantial discrepancy in digital transformation between the Arab country due to substantial discrepancy in economic development and income level and human development in Arab countries that we explained earlier. So the rich Arab Gulf country have better opportunity for digital transformation, while poor Arab country have poor opportunity for digital transformation. For example, here we can explain the different digital indicator. For example, figure 1 shows the digital index across Arab country. We see that, for example, United Arab Emirates leading the Arab country in terms of digital index, while Algeria reported the lowest index in the Arab country. We see that not all Arab countries has been included in the index, so we just make explanation for the country for which the data are available. The second figure shows the digital adoption index in the Arab country defined by income level. Here again, we see that the Arab Gulf country are leading in terms of digital adoption index. And this is not surprising because the Arab Gulf country or the government in Arab Gulf country are providing a lot of support for the digital adoption and digital transformation. The middle income come next, and the low income country, Yemen, Sudan, and Syria show low digital adoption index. Figure 3 also shows the digital adoption index by subcomponent. And here also we realize the differences across Arab countries. Figure 4 shows the enabling digitalization index defined by income level. Again, here the Arab Gulf country are achieving better in terms of enabling digitalization index compared to other Arab countries. Here also figure 5 show enabling digitalization index subcomponent defined also according to the income level. The main result of the research, on the other hand, in addition to discussion of the digital
I think we may have lost Dr. Samia. Dr. Samia, are you with us?
I think she disconnected.
Oh, I see. Well, we hope that she will be able to rejoin us. We'd like to, Dr. Samia, would like to warmly thank you for your very, very informative and expansive presentation, where you discussed the use of information and communication technologies, digital transformation, and digital divide in the Arab world. Your presentation touched on potential opportunities, positive impacts, as well as the challenges and negative impacts of ICT and digital transformation within the context of widening digital divide in the region. At this point, I would like to now invite Dr. Wen Chen, research fellow at the Institute of New Structural Economics at Peking University. He holds a PhD in economics. His research interests revolve around the theme of economic growth, development, including intangible capital, productivity analysis, global value chains, and China-Africa economic cooperation. Dr. Chen will present paper on South-South cooperation and technology, digital transformation, to the establishment of Science and Technology Park under the Belt and Road Initiative. Dr. Chen, the floor is yours.
Guys, sorry for the interruption, for the network connection. Yes, regarding
Yes, please
the
go
digital
ahead.
divide.
Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Ahmed. Continue, please.
Okay, we see the concentration of ICT diffusion in Arab Gulf country and wide disparity between them and other Arab country. We explain this in terms.
Dr. Samia, you're muted.
Yes, muted.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Bye-bye, thank you. And we see the substantial discrepancy in ICT indicator between Arab country, and this also discrepancy can be also explained in relation to discrepancy in economic development and human development. Here, this figure 6 show the trend of digital divide between the world region and Arab region. And figure 7 shows the percentage of households with access to computer and other indicators also explaining the digital divide between Arab countries defined by income level. Figure 8 also shows the trend of the global digital divide between the world region and Arab region. And figure 9 also shows the digital divide within the Arab region according to subscription to mobile. And figure 9 shows the digital divide within the Arab country according to internet user in the Arab country. And here also we explain the digital divide according to income level. Finally, the conclusion and recommendation, this paper provide important contribution and explain that ICT provide opportunity and challenge in the Arab country. ICT provide opportunity for supporting digital transformation in Arab country, but also provide ICT creates some challenge. For example, the incidence of the digital divide in the Arab country, and not only the incidence of the digital divide, but also the increasing digital divide in the Arab country. This research also supports digital transformation in the Arab country, provide recommendation for supporting digital transformation by enhancing, for example, regulation, institution, infrastructure, and connectivity. Also, this research recommend promotion of knowledge in terms of education, human capital, skill, innovation capability, and research and development. By this way, the Arab country can promote the digital transformation. Also, bridging the digital divide between Arab countries by enhancing investment and spending on ICT, enhancing also public and private partnership in investment and provision of ICT services, improvement of investment in ICT infrastructure, and also facilitating access and use of ICT. In addition to ensuring equality of access and use of ICT. In addition, also this research supports South-South cooperation, including Arab country cooperation in ICT, because we recommend that South-South cooperation is very important for supporting the digital transformation in the Arab country. For example, Arab country can learn from other Arab country in the south and to accelerate the digital transformation. Also, Arab country can learn from other country in the south to reduce the digital divide between the Arab country. So I think supporting South-South cooperation is very important for supporting the digital transformation and reducing the digital divide within the Arab region. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Noor,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
for a
Thank
very
you.
informative and extensive presentation. Dr. Wen
Okay,
Chen,
thank you much.
the floor
Thank
is
you.
yours for your presentation on South-South cooperation on technology and digital transformation through the establishment of Science and Technology Park under the Belt and Road Initiative.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Basada, for the introduction. And it's a real pleasure to join such a distinguished panel and this launch event. And also good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants online from all over the world. And also before I start, I'd like to take a moment to thank the UNO, SSC and UNDP for their financial support for making this research possible. So the work I'm presenting today is a teamwork that's been done by the Department of International Development Cooperation at the INSEE here at Peking University. So I'm presenting the report on their behalf, and much of the credit also actually goes to the other team members. As we only have 5 minutes for the presentation, so I won't be able to discuss all the details covered in the paper. So in interest of time,
you have 10 minutes.
Of 10 minutes, right?
Dr. Chen.
So I will keep the presentation concise, but really to the point, such that the key messages can go through and you will all have a clear big picture of this research. So the background of research is that we all know that technological progress resulting from innovation has been the key driver of modern economic growth. So while developing countries often tend to technology diffusion for technological progress as they are really far away from the frontier technologies, but future growth is really increasingly dependent on the speed and the scale of innovation. And the sudden outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has really catalyzed or even forced the companies or countries to deploy or adopt novel technologies to cope with as well as weather through this pandemic. So it's already been almost 3 years and COVID is still with us today. And experts have also warned that it could be here for the long haul, and economic activities or production activities may actually need restructuring or reorganization to be adapted to this new norm. So there's an urgent need for countries in the global south to really step up the efforts in innovation and the use of digital technologies. Cooperating with advanced countries is surely an important component of stepping up the effort, but strengthening technology cooperation among countries in the global south is probably even more important, as the effective endowments and technology levels are not too distant from one another, which makes cooperation in technology more likely to be effective and successful. So we consider this is a really timely study that aims to explore the avenues of cooperation between China and the other countries in the global south in setting up science and technology parks under the Belt and Road Initiative, which could serve as the cornerstone for contemporary South-South cooperation. And the research draws on the theory of new structural economics and combines desk research with field research for analysis. And here I also have to confess, also be modest in saying that we had a plan to do more field research, actually go to visit high-tech Chinese companies that have invested abroad and gather first-hand information on their cooperation experience with southern countries. But due to the pandemic and also strict regulations that's been put in place here in China, we did not manage to extend the field research except for the visit that we had to the Chinese Ministry of Science and Technology. But nevertheless, we did manage to finish the study well on time. So why did we focus on the Belt and Road Initiative, or why is the BRI so relevant for contemporary South-South cooperation on technology and digital transformation? Well, let me first briefly explain what the BRI is. It is a multilateral development strategy that's been initiated by China and launched in 2013, which seeks to connect Asia with Africa and Europe via land and maritime networks to improve infrastructure connectivity. So infrastructural connectivity is really at the heart of the BRI. But over time, the BRI has also evolved and also has been called a road of science and technology, which places innovation really high on the agenda. So here I have a figure. So the figure shown on the screen here tells you the number of signatories or participating countries of the BRI. So by now, there are over 140 countries or economies have joined the BRI. And as can be seen here on the figure, except for a large number of, let's say, the OECD countries, most or the majority of developing countries have signed the BRI cooperation documents. In particular, almost all the countries from Africa have joined the BRI. And China is the world's largest developing country, and Africa is the continent with the largest number of developing countries. So the combination of the two really makes the BRI really relevant, or particularly relevant to South-South cooperation in the contemporary world. And then the other focus that we have in the paper, in the report, is on science and technology parks, which is often seen as the hub or even the origin of innovation. A key feature of science and technology park is that it clusters high-tech companies and research institutes, either applied or theoretical or basic research institutes in a small designated area. So according to research, the first establishment of STP, which is actually known as Silicon Valley now, can be dated back to the 1950s. So as the engine of growth has increasingly tilted towards innovation, we can see that the pace of the establishment of STP, science technology parks, have also really accelerated over time, or even skyrocketed over the last decade. Up to now, most of the science and technology parks are located in advanced countries, but developing countries have also emerged as key players as well in recent years. The construction of a science and technology park is relatively easy or straightforward task, but making the work is really challenging. So in a report published by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, even for the US, the world's largest economy and also the world's most technologically advanced country, only about a quarter of the science and technology parks are found to be effective or successful in fulfilling its expectation in fostering innovation and contributing to the economy, while the majority actually failed to exist or contribute really little to the economy. So as a result, rather than developing the science and technology parks independently, southern countries really need to cooperate with one another, especially with those that have successful experiences on the development and the management of science and technology parks. So the report actually discussed various examples on South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation with respect to science, technology, and innovation, as well as two country studies in the report, namely Egypt and South Africa. So these are two countries that have actually joined the BRI quite early on and have cooperated with China on technological fronts. But in the interest of time, I will not really go into details here. And for people who are interested, please have a read at the report, which I believe will be made available soon after the launch today. So based on our on-site visit to the Chinese Ministry of Science and Technology, we have also identified 5 areas or 5 key avenues for technology cooperation between China and the BRI participating countries. And the first one is e-commerce, which I think is well known to the world that China has a gigantic e-commerce market and a number of world-leading companies in e-commerce, such as Alibaba. And second area is e-manufacturing, which basically refers to manufacturing using machinery automation technologies in manufacturing. And then due to the outbreak and the repercussions that we have now of the COVID-19 pandemic, public health is also a key area of cooperation. So in particular, the use of digital technologies in curbing or containing the spread of coronavirus. And the fourth area is green growth, which places growth in a sustainable and green manner at the heart of industrialization. And the last area that we identified is agricultural development. So we all know that industrialization or growth in general is not possible without a healthy development of the agricultural sector. For instance, we have to ensure food security before anything else can actually be developed. So again, here I will not go into details in the interest of time. And in this research, we have also proposed 2 models of triangular cooperation to advance or strengthen cooperation on technology and digital transformation. And the first model is to develop a science and technology parks from scratch, and they engage China and one developing country from the BRI and a
Sorry, Dr. Chen, you have 2 more minutes.
All right. All right. Thank you. And so the other, the third participant would be either a country from the global south or multilateral organization, so as to forge this triangular cooperation. And the second model is that rather than involving the public sector, the second model could turn to the involvement of multinational companies that all normally organize production activities across the globe. So it is often known as producing in the age of global value chains. So this is a very important model for triangular cooperation, as it would really help the host country to cultivate manufacturing capacities, provide jobs, and generate foreign exchange reserves through exports, thereby propel the diffusion of technology and reduce the digital divide between the global south and the global north. And lastly, the establishment of the science and technology parks can be really costly, and the return may not be so immediate. As a result, the private sector may not be so keen on lending or investing in such projects. So given its mandate to promote the development and address market failures, development financing institutions, they do provide patient capitals and has great potentials, or even it's necessary to involve them to forge this successful cooperation on technology and digital transformation. So the paper provided a list of policy recommendations to different stakeholders. While the list is really far from being exhaustive, but they are targeted to relevant stakeholders, and it may pave the way for closer and more successful South-South cooperation on technology and digital transformation. So the first recommendation that we provide is that the host government of FDI should really give priority to foreign investments in sectors that support the development and the use of digital technologies. And the second policy advice is that in addition to the funds that can be provided or obtained from the BRI, the involvement of the DFIs is also highly recommended to further advance or strengthen South-South cooperation. And third, to strengthen cooperation on STPs under the BRI, policymakers from China and the BRI participating countries could consider upgrading the existing STP or industrial parks with a special focus on science cooperation or technology cooperation. Last but not least, although science cooperation on technology is the central focus of this research, BRI could also play a pivotal role in this regard. It is also highly important and recommended to also involve countries from the global north or from international organizations such as International Association of Science Park to involve them in diffusing technologies and reducing digital divides. So I will stop here and thank you very much for your attention and for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen, for this very illuminating presentation that explored avenues for cooperation with China and Southern countries in setting up science and technology parks under the Belt and Road Initiative, which could serve as the cornerstone for contemporary South-South cooperation in scaling up technological transfers, innovation, as well as bridging the digital divide for advanced countries and accelerating digital transformation in the global South. Our final distinguished speaker for today is Dr. Waqar Ahmed. Dr. Ahmed is a Joint Executive Director, Sustainable Development Policy Institute in Pakistan. He holds a doctorate in international trade. He continues to publish on various aspects of international trade, finance, and private sector competitiveness. He's also an honorary research fellow at the Partnership for Economic Policy in Canada and served as a visiting faculty member and researcher in different international institutions. Dr. Ahmed today will be presenting a paper on digital trade integration, role of South-South, and triangular cooperation. Dr. Ahmed, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me start by thanking UNOSSC office and UNDP for this opportunity and for not only supporting this research, but also some very important inputs which were received during the course of this study. Now, this is a case study of 3 countries, which is Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Of course, my co-author, Maaz Javed, has played a very significant role in covering a very large space amid some very difficult times. The study was actually undertaken somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd wave of COVID. And of course, the collection of data was done amidst some very testing times. But we received a lot of cooperation from the local chambers of commerce, as well as the 3 national governments who have given official views as well as part of this study, for which we are really grateful. So the research objectives basically included looking into challenges and opportunities for the 3 countries and see how learning across the 3 countries could benefit from the South-South and triangular cooperation. Now, the 3 countries also have regional and free trade agreements signed with regional partners as well as bilaterally as well. How could those agreements be modified or be made more inclusive going forward? Then, of course, 2 of these economies are now Sri Lanka and Pakistan now have opened up their digital trade regionally, as well as being part of value chains abroad beyond the region as well. So one of the research objectives also was that how could the SMEs in the digital space benefit from the South-South and triangular cooperation. Our methodology was three-pronged. First, of course, we went into a very deep study of government documents, minutes of meetings held on this subject, not only within these countries, but these countries with their bilateral partners as well. We also looked into some data gaps, including definitional and classification gaps. We saw the treatment of the digital trade in the trade agreements which have been signed by these three countries. And we also conducted a firm level survey in the three economies. So we surveyed 25 firms in the digital sector in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, as well as in Afghanistan. And the filter was that most of these firms should also be exporters of services as well. So not just working within the country, but also working with the rest of the country. One of the major parts was the review of the trade agreements which have been recently signed by the three economies, and how they actually incorporate, or whether they incorporate digital trade or not. We have gone deeply into harmonization of standards, or the need for harmonization of standards, simplification of banking procedures when it comes to digital trade platforms, which are quite a norm in other countries, including I saw in presentation by Dr. Chen. However, these platforms are much new in this part of the world, and the fact that these platforms need to talk to each other is something which remains work in progress. Data protection laws are fairly new, at least in two of these countries. In Afghanistan's case, there's a draft available, but the law still has to go through. Issues around localization, transfer, and sharing of data is something which the governments have been working on during the past 4 or 5 years. However, this work has still got to materialize in regional agreements around this aspect. There is trade regionally in terms of digital as well as other ICT related products. But consumer protection remains a big issue, a big concern for not only the industry, but also the consumer segment as well. The example of Alibaba was cited. Alibaba is big in the region, but the national government still need to make a lot more efforts to inform the consumers how they are protected in the event of some online lapse. E-commerce platforms are fairly established now, particularly due to the push in COVID. However, within e-commerce, most of the digital payment systems are local payment systems. We still have to open up for international payment systems like PayPal. Currently, the only payment system that is being used is one which is national in Pakistan. The other one is Alipay, again backed by Alibaba. Then, of course, digital trade and domestic policies of these three countries have also featured. There is a domestic commerce policy in Pakistan, which is being amended to incorporate the digital trade clauses, and likewise for Sri Lanka as well. Currently, there's no domestic commerce policy for Afghanistan. Now, the risks which were identified in our firm level survey, while the urban firms are quick to integrate with digital trade, we found this for major cities like Lahore, Karachi, Kabul, Colombo. Most of the urban firms have a fairly good understanding of digital trade. However, in the peri-urban areas and the rural areas, the firms over there, the gaps that they've identified, those gaps get grouped into 7 or 8 large factors, including infrastructure gap, restrictions on electronic commerce, cybersecurity. In some cases, there's a discriminatory regulatory framework. Financing for digital firms has been a challenge. The limits to how much they can access formal credit were still low. And then, of course, travel constraints for service providers, but that was natural during the pandemic. The recommendations which the firms provided included initiation of a tripartite working group across Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, which could actually see that some of the challenges which have been outlined in the previous slide, if those could be resolved through South-South and triangular cooperation, ensuring digital inclusion, women in trade, financing for digital trade, particularly the startups in digital trade space, and of course, adoption of digital technologies at border checkposts. These were all areas which were identified that these could be factored into domestic policies and then be seen if they can be addressed through SS and triangular cooperation going forward. We also saw that in terms of goods trade, bilateral and regional goods trade, some of these factors which were featuring in the digital trade, they were the same. So even in case of goods trade, securing electronic authentication, digital logistics mechanism were the two main barriers which are still there. Part of this also has to do with the security outlook in Afghanistan. But even in case of established cities where Afghanistan is able to trade, for example, Kabul and Herat, these issues around electronic authentication still remain a big concern. Now, the recommendations specifically for South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation were grouped in our study in 6 main areas, namely collaboration in data infrastructure. There has to be a academia industry linkage here, but more so having national governments in the middle. Capacity building programs in IT and ICT space are there, but one really needs to identify that how can South-South learning further expedite them. They have to go beyond just the national governments, and also the private sector and the NGO sector and the social enterprise sector would be keen to become part of these social enterprise program. There has to be local level learning how taxes levied on digital trade or taxes levied in the digital sector can be rationalized. Some countries have done well, and examples of other Asian countries or Latin American countries were cited, which need to be learned through South-South cooperation. Special financial mechanisms for southern countries, cross-border investment cooperation between southern countries were other 2 areas which were recommended where learning can take place going forward.
Sorry,
so
Dr.
I'll just
Ahmed,
stop over here and
okay,
and thank you very much for the opportunity once again. It's back to you, sir.
Great, thank you for keeping to the time. Thank you. Thank you very much for this rich and insightful presentation, where you discuss a pathway for fostering regional digital trade integration through South-South and triangular cooperation in South Asia. Through your presentation, you've tried to answer 2 overarching questions: how inclusive regional and free trade agreements can help to overcome barriers and enable digital trade integration, and how can South-South and triangular cooperation help in reducing risks in digital trade, and South-South triangular cooperation be more effective in leveraging the potential advantages available to firms in the digital sector through normal and testing times, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Once again, I would like to give a big hand of applause to all the speakers in sharing the very insightful presentations. The papers are now available on the South-South Global Thinkers platform, and the links are also provided in the chat box. At this point, I'd like to take the opportunity to open up the session for pertinent questions from our distinguished participants who have been following today's webinar. We'll take as many questions as possible and allow for speakers the opportunity to respond to them. As mentioned earlier, participants are strongly encouraged to send their questions to the question tab, and we have approximately 10 minutes for the question and answer session. Let me start off as the moderator. I have a few questions of my own I'd like to put forward too. Firstly, for Dr. Samia, can you first discuss further in terms of the steps needed by Arab countries and the private sector in helping to bridge the digital divide in the Arab world in the context of South-South cooperation? And what is the role of deepening regional integration in strengthening digitalization of economies in the region. For Dr. Nguyen, what are your proposed recommendations to strengthen cooperation under the BRI, policymakers from China and the BRI participating countries that could consider upgrading an existing industrial parks with a focus on cooperation? Can you please also expand further on that and discuss the contribution and role of DFIs as an alternative and complementary roles of finance through the operationalization of the BRI? And Dr. Ahmed, if you can kindly respond to how can inclusive regional and free trade agreements help to overcome barriers, enable digital trade integration, and what can small and medium enterprises deal with digital trade related products, learn from the South-South and triangular cooperation? Let me have the speaker presenters respond to those questions first. Dr. Samia?
Yes, thank you very much for your comment and useful discussion. For the case of Arab country, I think South-South cooperation is very important because we see that many Arab countries are still lagging behind in terms of ICT, in terms of digitalization and digital transformation. We also see the large regional disparity within Arab country and also the difference between Arab country and other or as Arab region and other region. So I think South-South cooperation would be very important instrument to bridge the already existing digital divide within Arab country and also between Arab country and the other world country. And also South-South cooperation can also support digital transformation. So your question, how we can do this? I think by supporting, for example, digital infrastructure, supporting ICT infrastructure, institution, regulation, exchanging knowledge in this important issue. For example, some countries in the South are very advanced. For example, China and India and other countries in the South are more advanced than Arab countries. So how can Arab countries learn from this country, from country in the South, to improve ICT infrastructure, to improve also the human capital or human resources, to improve technical skill in ICT. This is very important for Arab country to learn, and also the capacity building in terms of improving ICT to promote the digital transformation. So I think South-South cooperation could be very important instrument for supporting capacity building and supporting improvement of knowledge in all Arab countries to promote the digital transformation and also to bridge the digital divide. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samia.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Nguyen?
So thank you for the question. If I remember correct, the first question was about how to really upgrade these science and technology parks and change the focus to more innovation driven, right? So I think here probably is also more aligned with the first recommendation that's been provided in the report. I think the first thing to do would be to really target or attract investment from more technology type of companies. So in China, we do have quite some advanced technology companies. They do want to expand their market to other countries, and often they're not even actually welcome sometimes in the US. Let's take the example of Huawei or Alibaba sometimes. So I think one thing is that really, we could try to prioritize this investment to attract this type of companies to go to the country. And also their investment, I think, is also really complementary to the manufacturing activities they have already on the ground, because with these tech companies, they do have these technologies that could help them to automate part of their manufacturing or production processes. So, but here we have to also watch out that once we do have these automation capacities, we have to keep an eye out for the potential negative impact that may also have on the local employment, because we do know that, for this manufacturing activity, especially labor-intensive manufacturing activities, one thing is that they could generate a large amount of jobs for the local market. So if we do involve a lot of more technology or high-tech investments, so we might also see a part of this negative impact on the local employment market. And the second question, if I remember correct, is about the role of the development finance institutions. And I think here, the key thing to take away here is that for these DFIs, often they are mandated to development, and often we have DFIs that have a specific mandate to, for instance, develop infrastructure. So here we can think of example like Asia, AIIB, Asia Infrastructure and Investment Bank. So to construct our science and technology parks, we do also need to have constructions. So we could resort to this DFIs that have a mandate to support infrastructure activities, and also they often do provide patient capital. So they're not looking for immediate returns on the investment, but they're also really patient capital, and they do not really, seek for high interest on the investment as well. So I think this is a key area where DFIs could also play an important role. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wayne, for this. And finally, for Dr. Ahmed.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for posing this very important question. I think two of the most important things which our survey picked up where South-South cooperation, South-South learning is probably a low-hanging fruit. One was that there are a lot of startups now coming in the digital space, particularly trying to engage beyond borders, so they're active in the digital trade space. However, for many of these countries where they're operating from, the regulatory regime of these trade enterprises, the digital trade enterprises, is very new. So probably the national governments require a lot of learning of how to regulate and how not to regulate. That's also a very important question, because in the end, you don't want to stifle the startups by over-regulation. So that's one. The second thing which the survey picked up was the tax treatment of firms operating in the digital space, because many of them don't have tangible products which are, of course, measurable. This measurement of intangible products, which is the services sector. So in many cases, the definition and the classification, which may be very new or not known fully by the local tax authorities, ends up meaning that the tax authorities may overburden them with several forms of taxes. So this is where I think South-South cooperation has to go, that how are other countries in the South introducing the tax regimes for these tech startups or SMEs which are active in the digital space. The last point here is the women in trade. Now, for large parts of Afghanistan or even Pakistan, I would say, the women chambers of commerce or the women associations, business associations are fairly new. And women in trade have actually pointed out that getting trade finance has been very difficult. So this is where I think we need to learn from other Asian countries, Africa, Latin America, that how have those countries created a revolving window whereby nascent women firms could access, or how could the local banking sector be encouraged to improve credit score in favor of these firms. So these are some examples where we believe that South-South and triangular cooperation could really help.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed, for this. We have an overarching question that I'll pose to all the presenters and get your input. What would be the next step to move forward in terms of cooperation? And what is the scope of individual private companies, organizations to play a part in promoting South-South and triangular cooperation? Dr. Samia, would you like to respond based on your research?
Yes, I think this project and topic is very important and provide very important contribution for supporting the digitalization and digital transformation, and also bridging the digital divide. And we can learn a lot from the experience of different countries in the South to support the digital transformation and accelerate it and also to minimize the digital divide between different countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samia. Dr. Chen?
Thank you.
Yes. So thank you for the question, and it's a quite big question. What will be the next step in move in terms of cooperation? Well, if I just take what's going on now, I mean, even though COVID has been with us for a very long time already, as I said, almost 3 years, but it's still around with us. And also digital technologies has been proven to be quite effective in really curbing and containing the spread of the virus. So I guess maybe, to start off, this is a public health crisis that we all have to deal with. And that might be the entry point, the sharing of these digital technologies. And I think that's in the interest of everybody, and that's not really for profit or anything. So that could be the entry point where we could, focus on in terms of cooperating with one another. And as for the role of private companies, I think again here, I will recall back to, the recommendations in the end, it will be down to the companies to make this innovation work. Of course, the government can play a role, but the main entity and innovation mostly comes from enterprises. So here for countries, when they try to attract investment, they can give priorities to private companies that are, promoting technologies, especially the use of digital technologies. Because for innovation, you can think of, you have this really drastic innovation, but in the meantime, we also have this more incremental type of innovation that is more based on the use of this digital technology that can gather data. So I think one advantage that southern countries have is that there are enough users of digital technologies. So I think that could really incentivize the investment from these more, we call that platform type of high-tech companies. So there, I think they could play a really big role. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen. Dr. Ahmed, final remarks?
Yes, thank you very much. I think at 3 areas where at least the 3 economies that we studied, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, stand to probably prioritize these areas. The first one, of course, is that all 3 of them have really new e-commerce policies. So there's a new ecosystem which needs strengthening, and there's a lot of learning from the southern countries which can go here. Second, of course, is digital payments. Here again, the 3 economies have been conservative about it. They've had apprehensions. National governments have had apprehensions, and we believe that learning from the south as well as from the north could really ease those apprehensions going forward. And last but not the least, cybersecurity policies in these 3 countries. So a large part of the firms who will be scaling up in the digital space would stand to gain if there are more robust cybersecurity policy and practice measures in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed. I'm afraid I need to bring this lively and rich discussions to an end as we have run out of time. This takes us to the closing session of today's event. As moderator, I'd like to take the liberty of sharing a few remarks of my own. Digital technologies are transforming the global development on a large scale, introducing potential for institutional reform and inclusive growth. Technology has the power to unleash crucial development capacities for globalization and improve access and inclusion for many marginalized groups in society, particularly women and children. Despite these potential advantages, Southern economies' impending structural shifts must include digital advancements more comprehensively. As examined through the vast research covered here, digitalization of global economy is imperative and the future in development. And in terms of expanding the access to digital technologies, increased internet adoption, promotion of public spending on ICT infrastructure, and creating a more favorable regulatory environment for the private sector investment in the digital sector. This work has thus attempted to better understand how South-South Triangle Cooperation is situated not only to engage, but also facilitate engagements of various global development actors to fully utilize and benefit from digital economic integration. On behalf of South-South, UN South-South Office for South-South Cooperation, South-South Global Thinkers Initiative, and our strategic partner, the United Nations Development Program, I'd like to take this opportunity to warmly thank our distinguished speakers for their tremendous contribution to today's rich discussions on digital transformations in the context of South-South cooperation, the hard work that went into the South-South idea papers, which we're very proud to launch today, and of course, our very engaging participants for their very active and important participation and the questions posed. Thank you very much once again, and goodbye.